It's Monday, and we're still shook over Florida's big flip. Texas disappoints on the field, but they were able to make up ground on a few important recruiting targets, and there's some big decisions on the horizon. This is the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Up first, Corey Bender with Gators Online. Bring him in right now. Four-star quarterback Jaden Rashada flipped to UF on Thursday. How long was that in the works?
I would say about several weeks. I first heard about it about a month ago. And, you know, with the way Miami's season was playing out, you kind of wonder, were some of these guys going to have a change of heart? Rashada was kind of off and on. You kind of we always heard he might come from the South Carolina game. So that was the one game that was always circled. But as far as the actual flip, we thought it was going to probably happen after maybe that weekend or after he took the visit, where you would think, though, if you're going to make that big a decision, hey, let me go to campus first, then I'll decide after. But he did it a few days before, so we heard about it, and the buzz was real. And that Monday is when really word started to get out. And now Rashad's in the class, and Marcus Stokes is probably going to stay put too. Florida will definitely take two quarterbacks this cycle, and based off Marcus Stokes' reaction, he's pumped to kind of compete with Jaden Rashada. So I think if you're Florida, you got to be extremely pleased because it's a pretty thin quarterback room, especially if Anthony Richardson goes pro. So I think this is the best way it could have played out for Florida. I think they're definitely stoked up in Gainesville.
You think that there was like a cooling off period when he committed to Miami, or do you think Florida stayed on him like from the instant he committed? Because it was pretty shocking. I mean, you know, those two teams were battling it out. So do you think that this interest between Rashada and UF was rekindled recently, or was it just UF never let up?
Yeah, so, I mean, when he made his commitment and then they got Marcus Stokes shortly thereafter, it kind of died off for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a little bit of a break in between as far as conversations go. But I would say midway through the season, towards the beginning, though, it started to pick up a little bit. And I think once Miami's season started to go the way it is right now, you know, interest started picking up more on Rashada's side. And then Florida's obviously, they stayed on him. They kind of sensed that, hey, this kid still has interest in us. So stay on him. He's an elite quarterback. One of the guys we could definitely add to this quarterback room. So I think overall, you know, there was a little bit of a break, but, you know, this has kind of been the works behind the scenes. Rashada's family, they kind of kept this under wraps, especially the last 2 to 4 weeks. And it really picked up steam, though, I would say in the last 2 weeks when conversations were taking place probably every other day.
Were these business conversations? Because when he committed to Miami, his attorney, Michael Caspino, told On3 at the time that he missed out on millions. He did not pick the highest offer. Quote, he went there because he loves Miami, the coaches, and the opportunity. So that being said, did he flip to UF for a better NIL deal, or was this truly he just, you know, saw the direction of the program?
I would say it's a little bit of both. Obviously, I mean, it's hard to ignore the whole NIL era right now, especially when it comes to quarterbacks and elite players. And I know, obviously, when it comes to that, he's definitely going to be taken care of. And, you know, it's definitely a very strong appeal. And what I heard, too, I know Anthony Richardson, he has the deal with Gatorade, a lot of Champ Sports, a lot of these are Fanatics, a lot of these big companies. And from what I heard behind the scenes, that's something Rashada definitely took notice of. As far as, you know, you can get those big NIL deals at certain schools, and, you know, with Life with Miami, that was a big one. But as far as in Florida, there's a lot of other big names, probably several NIL deals you could get being the quarterback at Florida. And that was another major appeal from what I heard. It was just, yeah, obviously he's getting a good NIL opportunities probably at Florida, but it's several of them. And the way Anthony Richardson's NIL opportunities, how everything played out with him, that was a major appeal. But also, too, he said the culture, the way the program's moving under Billy Napier. I mean, it's hard to ignore the facts. I mean, Florida, I said before the season, I thought they'd go 7-5, kind of in that range. I knew it was going to be a rebuilding year. A lot of skill positions, a lot of key positions were getting replaced. So I think if you're a Florida fan, you couldn't really expect too much this year. It wasn't going to be, you know, it was either they're going to have a really good season and Richardson's going to surpass expectations, or it's going to be kind of like that rebuilding year, kind of a bridge year. So I think with the NIL opportunities, obviously, that he can get at Florida, but also kind of the trajectory of the program, I think it was a good mixture, and that's what really sold Rashada.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it has been, I know you're in the thick of it covering it. I'm kind of, a step back from an overview perspective, but it has been really fun watching Mario and Billy go back and forth, and they both experience highs and lows. I mean, they both had times where they're up. They both had times where, it feels like, oh, we're down and we're never going to be back up. Well, here Florida is now back on the offensive. Is there anyone else that you think that maybe they could go after on Miami's commit list?
Yeah, I mean, there's still Cormani McClain, obviously. I mean,
they're not done there?
You say it one more time?
They're not done with Cormani?
No, I mean, they're still pursuing. I heard last week that, they're still pursuing. I mean, obviously, they haven't lost complete hope there. They're going to keep pushing till the very end. I think if you're Florida, you have to. You knew where you were sitting with that kid for the long haul. It's almost like Rashada. Learn from the Rashada situation. It was a very close battle. Now he's teamed up with Florida. And then Cormani, that's an in-state kid, and I mean, I think everyone in the world thought he was going to go to Florida. So, yeah, they're still pushing there. Tommy Kinsler's another one, an offensive lineman out of Ocala they really like. That was kind of an interesting situation this past week we can touch on. But
tell the folks about it. Tommy was on his way to Gainesville or ready to get in the car, and then what happened?
So he told me, he's like, hey, I'm texting with the kid. He's like, hey, I'm going to go to Florida. And I'm like, hey, safe travels. I know it's a short trip and all that. And he's like, yeah, thank you, and all that. Then he went on Twitter and said, even though I didn't speak to any Florida reporters, I'm still not going to Florida this weekend. I'm like, oh, my God, here we go, the whole drama thing. So, I mean, I cover my basis as through text and stuff. What they always say receipts or whatever, but I wasn't going to go all the way on that. But, yeah, I think Miami contacted them and basically kind of said, the rumor is they kind of, I'm not going to say pull a scholarship, but they kind of force them like, hey, if you take this trip, we don't know how this is going to play out on the Miami side. So the kid canceled the visit, and then Francis Maugla, he was kind of rumored to go on the visit. We had him as a surprise potential visitor. We didn't want to leak his name because he was kind of up in the air. Mm-hmm. But then he went on Twitter and had the same message.
Did the same thing.
So I think Miami kind of told those kids like, hey, don't take this trip and whatnot. So those are two guys Florida would love to have in the class. They both took officials already, so if they were to return, they have to take it unofficial. I'm not sure if that's going to happen right now. The one main kid, though, I would definitely say to keep an eye on if you're a Florida fan is Malik Bryant, the linebacker out of Orlando.
Okay.
It was a very, very close battle over the summer. It was kind of back and forth. Alabama was on top, then Florida, and then Miami kind of came in late. And I think that's when Miami started to really pick up momentum with a lot of these kids when they got Malik Bryant, because people thought it was Alabama, Florida, and then all of a sudden they started piling up commits at that time, and that's when the momentum started to shift. But definitely keep an eye on him. I know there's still interest in Florida. Both camps are still talking, and he's one of the guys, I think when you look at those Miami commits, I would probably put him as the most likely flip. If one was to flip to Florida, I think I would probably say him right there for sure.
Okay, but now also the inverse, because, even though it seems like Miami's down at the moment, they've shown signs that they can get off the mat and get some momentum as well. So is there anybody that Miami is still recruiting that's on UF's commit list?
Yeah, I mean, there's Jakeem Jackson. That's a kid that visited not too long ago. He's one kid to keep an eye on. Sharif Denson, I just don't see any of those kids flipping. Okay. Jakeem Jackson, we spoke to him over the weekend. He says he's locked in. And we asked him, how was the Miami game? He went to FSU. He's like, oh, it was terrible. As far as the score, what was about to, as far as it being such a one-sided
saying all the right things.
Yeah. And I don't see him. Kentucky was the biggest threat, I believe, with him because his brother's on the track and field team with the Wildcats. So yeah. I think with him shutting it down, he's taking official December 9th. That's his last official. He's locked in. Sharif Denson, I know he's close with Cormani McClain. I know that he's kind of working on him as well. I don't see that happening, too. He's a Florida legacy. Seems he just reiterated, too, he's locked in. I think, honestly, when it comes to Florida, I think a lot of their class stays put. Will Norman might be one to keep an eye on, the one who used to be at IMG. Mm-hmm. That was up in New Jersey. Syracuse is still kind of keeping it on, the nearby school. But, yeah, I think Florida's class is probably going to stay intact. If they don't, it'll probably be a kind of a surprise out of left field. I think they feel good about it.
Okay. Well, one other big surprise would be four-star offensive tackle Lucas Simmons. He's the Florida State Seminoles' prized offensive line commitment. He was on campus this weekend for an unofficial visit. What's your take on that? Where do you think the Gators stand with Lucas Simmons?
If Simmons was to flip to another school, I believe it would be Florida more than likely. And he was great. We talked late in the night on Saturday, and Love to kind of seeing Rob Sale, Darnell Stapleton again. Love the chemistry, basically the chemistry, the culture in Gainesville. Just said he loved having FaceTime with the coaches again, but he also said, I think the quote was, he kind of basically said, Florida has this and that. They build guys, they develop guys, but so does FSU, and that's where my heart is. And that was like the last thing he said to me. And I think he stays put with FSU for right now. Like all these other kids, he officially visited Florida in the summer. So it's kind of, if they could have gotten on campus in December for an official, then you start thinking, okay, they can kind of have a chance to really flip them. But with Florida using a lot of these officials earlier in the year, it's kind of tough unless not many kids take unofficials in December if you're a highly regarded kid.
Yeah, there's probably a good chance that was Lucas Simmons' last trip to Gainesville. Now, if they do get him on campus in December, like you said, to come in on a Saturday during an official visit weekend on his own dime, then things change.
Yeah, it's not far from home either in Clearwater from where he lives. So I think FSU, you probably feel pretty good coming out of the visit. Florida definitely made a strong impression. The conversations are still taking place, but I think just the vibe from talking to the kid, I think he stays put with FSU.
Okay. One of the last things we got to talk about from the weekend was 5-star cornerback Desmond Ricks out of IMG was on campus, and everybody's been talking about him since his reclassification a couple weeks ago from the 24 to the 23 class. Perception is LSU's the favorite. Desmond Ricks hasn't said this. Desmond Ricks isn't saying a whole lot right now, but the perception is LSU's the favorite. They still have an official visit. They're going to get the last one in December. What are you hearing, though, to where Florida stands coming out of this unofficial visit?
Florida feels pretty good about where they stand. From talking to sources, I think everyone believes LSU's position best. Just even the way with his official visits, LSU gets them right before signing day, and they always say follow the visits. And obviously, Alabama's getting him for the Iron Bowl. They're going to get an official as well. I think Florida right now, they could be a number 2 for him. It's kind of tough to tell with Alabama. They're kind of like the dark horse here. I think with Corey Raymond and his early playing times available in Gainesville, this past weekend they really rolled out the red carpet. Everyone had Desmond Ricks signs in the crowd.
I saw that.
He really gets really good treatment, obviously, at Florida. But you can kind of tell with LSU, he scheduled it that way with LSU getting the last visit. You can just tell there's a certain different buzz when you talk about LSU, the way he reacts on these visits. But Alabama's Alabama, man. I kind of view them as a dark horse. With them getting for the Iron Bowl and then getting official right before the LSU game, it's going to be interesting. And Florida gets the first official. So with Florida getting the first official, then Alabama and LSU, those schools are going to be more fresh in his mind. I think that might be the game changer, down the stretch for the kid. But Corey Raymond, that relationship's really strong. He believes he can play early. And another appeal is obviously the IMG kind of pipeline to Florida right now with Kamari Wilson and Najee Harris, who's in the class. He's obviously working on them. All those things are good and everything like that. But I think, with him visiting Florida 3 weeks before signing day and the other schools getting him on campus after that, I think to me that's kind of in my opinion, sealed the deal for either LSU or Alabama. I just think that's too long of a time to not get on Florida's campus with other two major contenders, at the very top for them.
Well, there's certainly a lot of buzz right now around Desmond Ricks, and I know UF fans feel a little bit more urgency with Cormani McClain going to Miami, so Desmond Ricks kind of steps up in importance to this class. All right, Corey, thanks for checking in with us, man. Always great information from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh.
Yep, see ya. We're back on the Inside Scoop. Up next, I got my guy, Director of Recruiting for On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, you and I were both rather shocked when we heard that Florida was flipping 4-star quarterback Jaden Rashada from Miami. It seemed like Miami was finding its stride when they snatched Cormani McClain from UF just 2 weeks ago. But in a matter of 2 weeks and a few losses, Miami is looking very vulnerable on the recruiting trail. Is there anyone else that Billy Napier and crew are working to flip?
Yeah, Josh, I think there's multiple guys, including some in the Miami class, some in other classes as well. They had, Tommy Kinsler. He's a Miami O-line commit from Ocala, Florida. He's been in communication with Florida. But I think the one that people, I don't want to say are sleeping on, maybe not talking enough about based on my intel, was Malik Bryant. We know going back to the summer, when he committed, he's 4-star, linebacker out of Jones High School in Orlando. When he committed in the summer, he pushed his commitment date back. At one time it was Miami, then it was Florida. We thought Miami was trending again. Then he pushed the date back, thinking maybe Florida had came back in there and took the advantage. But then he committed to Miami. I think in the end, I've had multiple sources that are close in that circle say that he just feels at home at the University of Florida. A lot appeals and intrigues him about Miami, of course, but keep an eye on Malik Bryant. There's been some communication there. I know there's some interest there on Bryant's side. He's definitely one that has not been talked about, that maybe needs to be talked about more in the coming days, coming weeks.
All right, interesting. Putting Malik Bryant on flip watch. He's a linebacker recruit, and we both know Miami and Florida are in need of linebackers. When he committed, who were the primary teams? I know it was Miami and Florida, but was there anybody else?
Yeah, he had Alabama in there as well, but there's no doubt it came to another battle between Miami and Florida. We talked about Jaden Rashada, Miami and Florida, Cormani McClain. Alabama again was in there, but it was Miami versus Florida. You look at Florida's recruiting class, over half a dozen of their commits have been committed at one time to other schools. So flips for Billy Napier is nothing new, and he's actually getting pretty good at it.
There's a lot of rumors, too. You mentioned Tommy Kinsler, offensive line commitment for Miami that was rumored to be heading to Gainesville. He literally put out a tweet Saturday morning saying that he is not taking a trip to Gainesville and that he is solidly committed to Miami. We also saw a couple other Miami commitments come out. Francis Malagway came out, 5-star offensive tackle, said he's solid to Miami. What's going on between Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal right now?
I think what's going on is some stress in Coral Gables telling those guys to put those tweets out and make a statement that you're not going anywhere, you're staying with the U. But to me, what that says is that there's some truth to those rumors behind the scenes about some interest from Kinsler to Florida. Malagoa, we'll see. If they can get those guys on campus, anything's possible. Obviously, the season's winding down, but there'll be some major, I think, in-home visits coming up in December to keep an eye on. And Florida flipping players from another school, I think, is far from over.
All right, well, it's going to be an exciting stretch run. Another one that was rumored was 5-star offensive tackle Samson Okunlola. He's narrowing his decision, but there was rumors over the weekend that he was going to show up in Gainesville. He did not show up in Gainesville. There was reports that he did, but he did not. Now, he has taken official visits, but he has one remaining. Do you think that Florida can get in the mix? I know Miami leads heavily in the recruiting prediction machine. Ohio State's right there. But does he step foot on campus in Gainesville before his decision?
It wouldn't surprise me, Josh. Obviously, the thing about that's been, really holding Samson back this fall is his games are on Saturday. So I think he had one off week this whole entire fall that he did not play on Saturday. He happened to be at Miami just a week and a half ago now for their game. So I think Miami's still, based on what I'm hearing, in the best spot. But I do expect Samson to take another official, maybe an unofficial or two if he can. Like you said, Ohio State's in there. Michigan State's definitely not going away as well. Ohio State's involved, like you said. Miami is the trending one. But there has been some talk around the University of Florida trying to get him on for that fifth and final official visit. I think he has 2 left. I want to say it took 3. I think Bama, Michigan State, and Miami in the summer. So I do think he'll finish things out and then figure out where he wants to go. But Florida's definitely a school in communication, working to get him on campus.
All right, so it's interesting. We're in a fun time, this NIL era, and I see that Okunlola has teamed up with an NIL company to make his announcement. Does this mean NIL opportunities are going to play heavily into his decision?
Yeah, 100%, Josh. I think he's looking for the opportunity outside of football to market himself, market his brand. He's known as hashtag Pancake Honcho. It's been talked about IHOP getting involved with pancakes. He wants to capitalize. Obviously, nothing wrong with that. The opportunity's there now for them to do that. So I think he likely releases his final 5 schools through that company he's pairing up with and really works through them through video, through multimedia, YouTube channel stuff to really market his brand. So I do think when he makes that final decision, I think the NIL deals and what doors can open for him outside of football will play a big role in his decision.
All right. Well, it'll be fun to follow. Thanks for checking in today, Chad. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.
Sounds good, man. Thanks, Josh.
See ya. Next up on the Inside Scoop, we have national recruiting analyst Sam Spiegelman. Sam, watching football this weekend, and I thought a lot about you. I was watching the LSU game, and everything linebacker, edge rusher, whatever, destroyer, Harold Perkins was out there doing his thing, and I just remember you always tweeting about him. Now, you got to see him live in person. Did you know he was going to be this good?
Yeah, Harold was such an interesting recruitment because, he started off as a basketball player and he gave football a shot. He trained under Antonio Cromartie out there in the Houston area, and he took to football so quickly. I saw him as a sophomore, a junior, and again as a senior. And one of the things that stands out, he's been taking over games on both sides of the ball for the entirety of his high school career. So it's really not that surprising that he's making this impact. The only thing that's surprising is he's doing it so quickly at the best division in all of college football, and it doesn't look like anyone can solve him at this point.
And it just looks like he's getting better week to week. So that leads me to my next question, and I'm not the only one that wants to know this. I bet there's 100 college coaches out there that also want to know this. Who's the next Harold Perkins? Do you see one in the 2023 class?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because of the position he plays, I don't know if there is a player in the 2023 class at that position, a priority, hot, game-changing position where you can take over the game. The best comparison I can give you, it's a different position, but the same way we talked about Perkins and taking over the game on offense, defense, special teams, is Peyton Bowen, the 5-star Notre Dame commit. You see what he's doing in the playoffs. You see what he did all regular season. You can't kick to him on kickoffs or punts. He'll score. You can't throw against him because he made an Avenger-like pass breakup in the end zone. He was beat, and he made up ground and still had a pass deflection. I think he had one-handed interception as well. That kind of difference-making ability at this level, when you do it week to week, it's usually a great sign for how it translates. But at Harold's position, as an off-ball linebacker, I don't know if anyone can create chaos much like Harold Perkins can.
No, and it's been fun to watch. Let's move on. Let's get to some recruiting now. So Texas had their big visit weekend. Didn't really go as planned. It could have gone better had they beat TCU. But there was still plenty of action off the field when it came to recruiting. Most notably, 5-star quarterback Arch Manning was in Austin for the TCU game. He's an active recruiter on social media. Every time he @s somebody or mentions another recruit, it's notable. So what did you hear about his time in Austin on the sidelines recruiting for Texas?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I joked with him because over the summer he was on all these visits and he was on his official visit, but it was also him recruiting the class around him, which was something he aimed to do for much of his recruitment. And then Colton Vasek committed to Oklahoma and Anthony Hill committed to Texas A&M. So I did get a joke with Arch several months ago about as much of a great football player you are, it's not translating to the recruiting. But look at us now. Colton Vasek has flipped from Oklahoma to Texas. He was back in Austin for this big game environment. And also Anthony Hill, the 5-star linebacker from Denton Ryan, was on campus. Got a lot of FaceTime with not only Steve Sarkisian and the Texas coaching staff, but with Arch Manning. They have grown close in this process. Their families have grown close. Cooper accompanied Arch on this trip. They were also talking up 5-star Deuce Robinson, USC commit Jacoby Lane. Those are two of the best pass catchers we've seen all throughout the year and various offseason events and All-American game events. Right now, it looks like, even though that game didn't turn out the way they want, that environment in Austin, having game day there, and people want to play with Arch. People are attracted to playing with the elite-level quarterbacks, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They have a great O-line haul, and they're trying to add a few more playmakers at the skill positions, and I think Arch is putting them in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was there to recruit the number 1 linebacker in America, Anthony Hill. As you said, the 5-star recently decommitted from Texas A&M. So what are you hearing on his recruitment coming out of this visit to Texas?
Yeah, I think that Texas is in the driver's seat with Anthony Hill at this point. He wasted no time getting to Austin. They have been in his ear even after he committed to Texas A&M. That was a close call between 2 in-state programs. A&M got the edge, but Texas never took their feet off the gas. He spent a lot of time with Steve Sarkisian, but leading into the game, and I think that always says a lot when the head coach pays attention to not only you, but your mom and your dad and your little brother. And I know that all the reviews coming out of this weekend were very encouraging for Texas. Now, there is some buzz that he might go up to Ohio State for the Michigan game. Texas A&M, according to people that I have spoken with, believes that they will still have a fighting shot when he makes his decision during the early signing period. But from what I've gathered, it feels like Texas is the team to beat. This visit went a long way in kind of cementing some of the thoughts that Anthony had. And Texas' defense still played really well, especially in the front seven. And I think Coach Steve Sarkisian is telling Anthony that he can be an impact freshman, like we talked about with Harold Perkins on that defense.
All right. One prospect that was not there was 5-star safety Peyton Bowen. I got just a quick question for you. His lack of presence on the sideline at Texas, does that bode more for his commitment to Notre Dame or just lack of interest in Texas?
You know, it might be a little bit of both. Now, there is a little bit of an X factor. Peyton's little brother, Eli Bowen, a highly sought-after defensive back in the 2024 class, got hurt during their playoff game on Friday night. But I had heard leading into the visit that he was not going to make it to Austin. I know that we've reported on our network elsewhere. I think that there was optimism on the Texas coaching staff that they would get the 5-star from Denton Geyer on campus. But Texas has not been in the mix with a lot of these Geyer kids, at least in this 2023 class, from Jackson Arnold, who's committed to OU, right, Ryan Yates, who's committed to LSU, and Peyton Bowen, who's committed out of state to Notre Dame. Peyton Bowen will be in Bedlam this weekend. Right now, it's shaping up that Oklahoma might be the biggest threat to Notre Dame.
Okay. All right. Now, Texas A&M is hanging on by a thread here. The season has not gone the way that most expected it to. That being said, their prized 5-star defensive line commitment, David Hicks, visited Oregon over the weekend. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, initially I thought it was, it's a big game out in Eugene, and he's had a great relationship with the previous Oregon staff. He's got a great relationship with his current Oregon staff, including Dan Lanning, the head coach who recruited him at Georgia. He officially visited over the summer, and then he committed to Texas A&M in October. It felt like his recruitment was over, but that is not the sense that I'm gathering. I'm not saying that he's going to flip away or back off his commitment to A&M, but I think he is doing his due diligence. I was told it was a really good visit to Oregon over the weekend, and they're trying to dial up their push for David Hicks to bring him out of Katy, Texas. He's going to head to Bedlam this weekend, and Oklahoma, we know, finished second for his commitment a few weeks ago. I think both of those schools could be in the mix as he tries to, finalize whatever plan he makes before the early signing period.
Finalize a plan. Are you insinuating there could be a final decision?
I think that's fair to say. We know that verbal commitments are just that. They're verbal, and they are binding, sure. And I think that Texas A&M has built up plenty of credibility with David Hicks, and getting his commitment so much earlier than anticipated went a long way. And from talking to people at A&M, there's still a good deal of confidence about where they sit with David Hicks. But he is exploring his other options. I think he wants to feel very confident about whatever school he does. Just, when you're a blue chip recruit like David Hicks and you've been to all these different high level programs around the country, you just want to be very confident in your decision. And I think that's what the family is going through right now.
Yeah. And if A&M can win a couple more games, it would probably make him feel a lot more comfortable with his decision. So we'll keep monitoring this. Another 5-star flip could be on the horizon. Sam Spiegelman, thanks for checking in today. We'll see you on Thursday.
Good to see you, Josh.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.